This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and I would also like to declare an emergency today and propose that an immediate change is necessary in regards to Vancouver, climate change, and how we are perceived by others all around the world. I think it's time we change Vancouver's logo in order to make Vancouver synonymous with watermelons. I think that should be the new logo of Vancouver. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the core identity of Vancouverites because, let's face it, they're very green on the outside, but they're just downright red on the inside. We're talking environmentalist activist peel with a cultural Marxist core. Wouldn't that make much more sense instead of this? Whatever the heck that's supposed to be? Well, allow me to show you a perfect example of why we should be known as the Watermelon Province. This just out from National Post. We need to respond to this crisis. Vancouver councillors unanimously approve motion declaring climate emergency. Climate activists rally at Vancouver Art Gallery, downtown Vancouver, with signs like, Trudeau, Notley, and Anderson shove the pipeline where the sun don't shine. Yeah, that's the plan. Vancouver City Councillors have voted to join cities such as Los Angeles and London in declaring a climate emergency. The city clerk's office says in a social media post that councillors voted unanimously to approve the motion. Councillor Christine Boyle, who moved the resolution, says staff now have the mandate to dramatically strengthen Vancouver's climate action plan. She says that can include new methods to reduce greenhouse gas emissions beyond the city's current climate targets and creating a special working group to support Vancouver's efforts to transition off of fossil fuels. So in other words, the state is going to increase its power and its power hold over the economy by creating a tax and a price on carbon. Side note, guys, we all exhale carbon. It's an element on the periodic table of elements. So when we're talking about it being a toxin that needs to be taxed, we're now venturing into some very dangerous territories that is setting an even extremely more dangerous precedent. And where did they get this idea that it's all of a sudden now an emergency? Could it be from a decades-long propaganda campaign headed up by the likes of Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio and others, who are seeking to convince you that you are the problem, and therefore you are the one that needs to be controlled and regulated? But one would think that any rational human being witnessing this would stand back and say, okay, if this is really an emergency, how is putting a tax on carbon supposed to fix anything? How is giving the state the power to control industry and restrict consumer choices going to bring about this post-industrial green utopia? Newsflash, folks, it's not. This is not only just a massive cash grab by the government, but it's also an excuse to set up a global authoritative body on climate change that will work in tandem with the United Nations to erode our sovereignty under Agenda 2030 and to eventually set up a one-world government. Maybe if the power elites didn't destroy or confiscate all of Tesla's work, we could be harnessing the power sources that he discovered. But no, we're unfortunately dealing with a power-hungry elite who will stop at nothing to maintain their position of control. And here's another side note for you. Most people in Canada think that the lack of a pipeline is the real crisis here. Nearly 6 in 10 Canadians polled call lack of new pipeline capacity a crisis. A slight majority of Canadians are calling the lack of new oil pipeline capacity in the country a crisis, according to findings from a recent survey by the Angus Reid Institute. The Institute surveyed 4,024 Canadian adults between December 21st and January 3rd and found that 58% affirmed that the lack of new oil pipeline capacity constitutes a crisis, while 42% said it does not. So that says quite a bit right there. And yes, the climate is changing, and yes, it might even be warming up, but that's a good thing, because it means longer growing seasons. Longer growing seasons means you're going to get a more greener and fertile planet. And that's what people really want. Canadians don't want a carbon tax because there's absolutely no justification for such a thing. Pollution is and always will be an issue. I mean, we all want to breathe clean air. But before the state started intervening in free markets, the issue of pollution used to be a property issue. If a corporation was polluting your land, for example, you could take them to court and slap them with an injunction. But the state put an end to that in order to serve their banking and their industrial interests. So the bottom line is, this is a state problem to begin with, folks. So looking to them for a solution is not just dumb and irresponsible. It's downright dangerous. Because the whole concept of man-made climate change is about one thing and one thing only: global government. The elite class all throughout history have always desired world empire, but the power elite of today know that they can't just bomb their way to global governance. They need to fool the masses, and they've done just that by infiltrating our schooling system, corrupting our science, and by making up this non-existent issue, which the only solution for is that you have to give up all of your rights to a global bureaucracy in the name of saving the environment. Folks, the biggest emergency facing Canadians is not man-made climate change, but it's how these governments are going to act in order to combat this non-issue. If you appreciate the information presented in this video, please share it and also click the thumbs up button to help ensure that it gets seen by the people who need to see it the most. And I want to remind you that this channel is only made possible because of the financial support that comes directly from you, the viewers. I have no corporate sponsors, I don't get any major funding like the mainstream media does, but what I have is something much better, and that is support that comes directly from you. So if you haven't yet, please visit pressfortruth.ca/donate to find out how you can make a contribution with a one-time donation, or how you can join us as a PFT patron or a PFT member. So that's all for today, my friends. Don't forget to share this one and give it a thumbs up, and stay tuned. We've got more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.